everybody, I'm Matt Gainey, better known to some of the IG people as Gainey187, and I'm coming to you from deep within the Matt Cave in sunny Phoenix, Arizona, where I currently reside with my wife, my daughter, my 2 dogs, my cat, and my 2 tortoises. I am an avid collector of tapes, and I've been doing that for probably about 5 years now. As you can see, it's something that has taken over my life pretty much. Well, the part of my life I allow to be taken over by things I obsess about. I am not somebody who was always into tapes or who always had tapes around. In fact, there was a period where I did forsake tapes for a bit back in the early aughts. As a kid, we didn't have a lot of new tapes. We had a lot of, home recorded tapes. When my mom bought a new tape, it was always like this big ordeal. It was like when she came home with Batman. I still remember her pulling the driveway, our gravel driveway, with her Buick Skylark, popping out like, I bought this at Safeway, and it was Batman on VHS, and I was just fucking like, holy shit. It was like that with us with buying new tapes, and that's something that definitely informs my current obsession, is that having like the actual versions of tapes, like the actual like store-bought, fucking not recorded off of TV with commercials or recorded off of HBO with the fucking beginning thing where it's spinning around the O and everything like that. All that's cool. I love commercials. I love the fucking nostalgia of the HBO introduction. It's very well done. However, when it comes all down to it, I would definitely rather have, the slip, the actual fucking studio distributed version of the movie, especially the movies that I hold near and dear. But I also love collecting because it's cheap for the most part. Compared to some of the other shit that people collect. I like the imperfection of the media. I love the look of the media. It's obviously the way that us kids of the 80s grew up watching film, and there's a lot to be said for continuing to enjoy it that way. I think that a lot of us probably are like that. Like, we just enjoy watching it on VHS, especially for me if it's movies that came out during that time period, For me, especially like the period of the late 70s to the early 90s, the power era of VHS. And as such, those are the tapes that I long for, are tapes that look cool from that era. If it's tapes that are before, that are movies that were released before or after that, I might still be down with them, but not going after them usually with the same sort of gusto as that sweet spot right there. I also collect tapes because I love movies a lot. If you don't love movies and you're collecting tapes, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, I've always kind of been around movies. We went to rental stores a lot, rented tapes. One of my first jobs was at Blockbuster, which I know a lot of people in the community are like, oh, fuck Blockbuster, because they put the death knell on mom and pop video stores. But hey man, I worked there and it was a cool job. It got me more into film. I gave a lot of other movies a chance that I wouldn't have normally. I kind of got a different perspective than some of the other people in the community. I actually worked at Target during the last stages of VHS, and we kind of always shit on VHS at the time because it just occupied this 4-foot section in like the middle of the fucking department. Nobody ever bought any VHS, and I was always fucking like, griping to my manager like, why don't we put something else here? This shit never sells. And plus, it was like twice as much as like the fucking DVDs. So there was literally no reason to keep those VHS there. And he was just like, well, it's not up to me, blah, 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 blah. I was like, yeah, well, whoever's making the decisions, fucking idiots. I still feel that way. But nowadays, I kind of like those tapes that were from the end period of VHS. Those are pretty cool, especially, the last one that came out, the History of Violence. I was after that tape for a fucking long time, as I'm sure many people are or were. But it was really important to me to get both, like the first VHS release, which from my research, there was actually 3 of them, I think. There was Patton, Sound of Music, and MASH. I think Patton was one of them. I know it was MASH and Sound of Music, and I wanted MASH, so I got that, the magnetic release, and then getting that other one, the last VHS to be released, History of Violence, was a toughie. So fast forward to 2015, I was at a Comic-Con here, and there was a Fangoria booth that was fucking vacant. There was a woman that was manning the booth, but nobody was there, nobody cared. It was like right at the end of Fangoria, right before they went under and then like rose like the phoenix to put out 4 magazines a year. And so there was a booth there, and they have VHS lined all around the booth. They were all horror movies, you know? I was instantly intrigued because some of these covers were just fucking amazing. I never heard of the movies before. And so I asked about the movies. There was no sign saying they were for sale. There were no prices or whatever. And I'm not sure that they were actually supposed to be for sale. But the lady there, she was just like, yeah, these are, you know, we're selling these. These are for sale. And I was like, oh, okay. How much are you, how much are they? And she was like, oh, $1 a piece. $1 a piece sounds good. I looked around at all the titles. I picked out 5. I remember that DEFCON 4 was one of them, which I'd never heard of. There were a couple other ones. I think The Stepfather was in there. Fucking Cannibal Hookers was in there. You know, to this day, I wonder why I didn't just buy all of them. But at the time, I wasn't that. I just started, you know, picking up VHS at Goodwill's. At the time, I was also at the beginning of my Comic-Con experience, and I didn't want to just like spend fucking $50 on tapes and have to lug them around the whole rest of the day. So all that played into my decision making there. Of course, now looking back, I totally would have bought all of them, you know, because there were a lot of fucking heaters there, which I didn't know they were heaters at the time either. But that was a big step up for me in getting into collecting. First tape I ever owned, it's hard to even pin that down, and also to differentiate between tapes that were my family's or tapes that were mine. I know that we had a copy of Bigfoot King of the Monster Trucks, and that's one of my favorite tapes still. I used to be all about Bigfoot, as I'm sure many young boys of the 80s were, and this tape provided hours of entertainment for me. And also I had a making of Michael Jackson's Thriller, which was just super cool. Not just for the awesome video, but to see all the behind the scenes with Rick Baker's effects and everything. And also to see Carlton doing the moonwalk at the end. That's awesome. As far as the first tape that I like bought for myself, I believe that is, oh God, what's that movie? Nicolas Cage, Samuel L. Jackson, and David Caruso. Kiss of Death. I bought Kiss of Death, and that was like the tape. That was the only tape that I had in my room because I didn't want my mom to know that I had it. And I'd watch it all the damn time. I thought it was the coolest fucking movie ever. I used to watch Kiss of Death over and over and over. And you know what? I watched it recently and I still love it. Like, it's not something that was just like I thought was cool then. It was just because I was a little punk ass, which I was, but I still love watching that movie, especially when Nick Cage is pressing that stripper. He acts like such a fucking badass in that, and you kind of believe him too. I dig that one. That was the first movie I actually bought with my own money. So I kept collecting these tapes, and after a while, I had so much that it was just kind of becoming a thing that I was known for. And a couple of my friends, one in particular, noticed me accruing all these tapes and said, you know, you should start doing a fest showing a bunch of movies that, you know, are really obscure and nobody's ever seen before, and maybe pepper in a few classics or whatever. So I started doing that. We started having some movie fests every month, and that kind of kicked shit into hyperdrive for me. When I started doing the fest, I maybe had like 100 tapes, and now I have between 4,000 and 5,000. I really don't know how many I have, but I'm very certain that it's over 4,000. And yeah, it's crazy. It's a bit of a problem. And I'm actually in the middle of a huge overhaul right now where I'm just getting rid of a bunch of old classics that I don't mind having digitally, that aren't classics in the sense that they retain serious sentimental value for me, or movies that I watched tons of times as a kid. But just movies that are good movies that I don't really feel the need to hang on to in analog format. I've been getting rid of those and trying to get some kind of digital copy of them so I can still watch them when I want to. Because for me, it's not just about collecting the tapes and collecting cool tapes. It's about having tons of entertainment, like all the movies I could ever ask for at my disposal, at my fingertips at all times. And so it's really hard for me to pick movies or tapes to lose from the collection, because if they're tapes that are movies of any quality at all to me, and I'm not going to have a copy of that tape anymore or that movie anymore, that creates a little ball of anxiety in the back of my head where I'm just like, well, what are you going to do when you want to watch that fucking movie now, man? You're going to pay like $3 on fucking Amazon Prime? One of my favorite tapes that's very rare, that's also a tape that I'm very much into, is this one, Trampa Infernal. This one I got at a video store that closed down, and I actually bought the contents of the entire store for $50 on an eBay auction. That was an insane time for me. In fact, that was probably the time that will go down as the craziest shit that I ever fell into, being a VHS collector, because it was literally a store full of tapes. A lot of them have been already purchased by people that came by. I even saw some of the people that I follow on Instagram come by, and we were digging through crates together. At the end of it all, there was still a whole back of a store chock full of like countless boxes full of crap. A lot of fucking porn. So much porn, man. DVDs and VHS of porn. It's unimaginable how much porn was there. And it took me a long fucking time to get rid of all that porn. And a lot of it, the DVDs anyway, that I could not sell, I just left them behind stores in alleys, you know? It's like somebody's gonna find this and be like, hell yeah, dude. Spank Bank just got a huge deposit. I couldn't do anything with them, you know, and they were just sitting in the front of my house. My wife would have to get home every single fucking day and see all this porn in the front of the house and, you know, have to have it looking her square in the eye. It wasn't right. It wasn't fair of me to expect her to keep on doing that. I had to do something. So yeah, I sold all that shit eventually. I kept a few of the porn titles that were kind of fun, like Hung Wankenstein. I kept that one. That's probably my favorite. And the fucking John Bobbitt tape after he got his member reattached. But they also had in the very, very back of the store, back in the manager's office, there were 3 or 4 boxes chock full of big box Mexican tapes. I secretly love these tapes so much. Like, I love to watch them. I love to see the storylines. You know, I do understand Spanish, quite a bit of it. Sometimes it's too fast for me to completely comprehend. Hey, I took 4 years in high school, and I'm pretty good. I even, when I worked at Target, I was a dude that they had to come to if they didn't speak English. I can work around it. I can't really speak it too well, but I can definitely understand it. But I really enjoy this movie. I've watched it so many times. And it just so happens to be a very rare tape that I've actually been hit up multiple times. People saying, hey man, if you ever want to get rid of that, that's like my holiest of holies when it comes to grails. But, you know, sorry, I just love it too much. I'm not going to get rid of it. I don't think ever. As far as my grail, I actually got it already. My grail was, I was looking for this shit for the longest time. Hang on, let me grab it. Here it is. Going Ape, with Danny DeVito and Tony Danza. Now, this movie is not a good movie by any stretch of the imagination, but it is Tony Danza and Danny DeVito looking after 3 adult orangutans in order to come into some inheritance. And I really, really like it. I love ape movies, first of all, and I love Tony Danza, and I love Danny DeVito. And I'd never heard of this fucking movie before. And I couldn't find it streaming anywhere. And I couldn't find it available on DVD. And I couldn't, you know, find it. And like, I needed to see this movie because it had so much of the things that I love in life. And so this became my grail tape for the longest time. And finally, like, one of my best friends that I've made from VHS collecting, who has become one of my best friends overall, Clowney, Matt, hooked me up with this. And yeah, it's in a cut, but he put it in a sweet Anchor Bay, one of those fancy pants clams. So it looks super legit. I love it. I watch it all the time too. That is my grail tape. And I always have like smaller grails that I'm after, but this is the one that was like, oh my god, I love you so much. Here, let me show you. Coolest wild find? Well, I have to pick this guy over here. I found this last January, a little over a year ago, at Goodwill for 50 cents. And it was the coolest because this specific Goodwill, like, gave me absolute caca for, like, months and months and months. But it's like, it's the Goodwill right next to my fucking grocery store. So I always felt like I'd be cheating myself if I didn't fucking drop in there to see what was going on. And sure as shit, this one day I go in there and there's absolutely nothing else there except this fucking copy of Pieces. Vestron copy of Pieces that, you know, I'd never had a copy of Pieces. It's definitely been on my list for a long time. When I saw this shit, amazing find. But my coolest find, bar none. Newest tape acquired would probably be this guy, Zipperface, AIP Studios. I got this recently from a very cool gentleman on Instagram, and he was very fair with his pricing on that. The trades are great, and I will always prefer doing a trade to buying, but sometimes a trade just isn't, you know, in the cards, and you kind of gotta feel your way through those situations, and sometimes, you know, if you can come to an agreement on a price, buying is the better way to go. And this guy wanted to sell his tape, and I talked to him about it, and like I said, he was very fair, very cool guy, always has been. So I'm excited about this. I like AIP. There are some movies that AIP puts out that I can't get down with. I'm not like I need every AIP tape. There are certainly no shortage of great films put out by that company that entertain me thoroughly, and this one definitely entertains me thoroughly. A lot of good times. So another big thing that boosted me up in my collecting journey was finding the tape community via Instagram, and that was just plain old following the hashtags I was laying down, and I realized that there's this whole like subculture of people who were pretty much just like me, you know, who love the same stuff I love. And it's really amazing how deep this community goes. I have a few friends that I've made through this community that like I talk to every day. They're like my family. They are seriously like my brothers, and I talk to them about all manner of bullshit, you know, serious, not serious, tapes, not tapes. It runs the gamut. I couldn't imagine my life without these dudes and these people that I've met. I couldn't imagine my life without that community as a whole. Like, it's just been such a crazy ride, like being a part of the tape community in Instagram, and to a lesser extent Facebook, but I'm not as active as I am on Instagram. So I'd like to say that my favorite part of the tape community is how it just kind of latches into your life and doesn't let go, and it's can be everything for you. It can be everything you need, because there are a lot of people out there who do the same thing we do, and who are really, really genuinely awesome people, even when you get past all the cool tapes that they have that you want to trade for, or you want to buy from them. They are good-hearted, compassionate, caring, giving, awesome people, and that's my favorite bit of that. I really would only want to bring up one trade. I've done tons of great trades with tons of great people, but there's one trade that I wanted that just kind of the first to pop into my head and won't let any others in when I think about the trades I've done and which ones are seriously notable. And that's my last trade with Nick. Nick was a guy that was pretty active in the tape community on Instagram. A lot of other tape heads knew him and loved him. He was a silly guy. He was very fun, liked to play pranks and like antagonize. I wouldn't call it exactly trolling, because it was never really mean-spirited what he did. Like, he did the kind of thing that you couldn't help but laugh at, even if you were the target, because his mannerisms were such that you knew it was all from a place of love. You know, that was one of the things that was really great about him. He's no longer around, but he was, you know, he's one of the best friends I've ever had. And we talked about all sorts of shit, you know, I mean, all sorts of real life shit. And stuff like, I knew his deep problems and he knew my deep problems, and we'd bounce ideas off each other. At the same time, we'd be like joking and talking about who we should prank on, you know, movies and which actors we were collecting and stuff like that. His last trade with me was actually kind of like he was making up for a care package I sent him, but he sent me a box with The Alien Within. And there were a couple other things in there, including including some diapers for my daughter. He loved that I became a dad, and he loved being there to talk to me about becoming a dad. He would always talk to me about what a great dad I was going to be. It was the most meaningful thing because I was so fucking like petrified about how I was going to do. That was a notable trade. And any trade I did with him was really notable. But like I said, there's no shortage of great trades and great people out there. Been the recipient of many great trade items and many great trade discussions. I wish they'd happen more often, actually.